I don't think that was the smartest thing for men's health to keep in this video. From a personal trainer, let's watch what Zac Efron eats in a day with Men's Health.
Hi, I'm Zac Efron. Men's Health has asked me to tell you about what I eat. Let's dig in.
It hasn't even started and I've got something to say. Men's Health specifically, you're irking me because you've called this Eat Like Zac Efron. Where that really rubs me up the wrong way is that what that is implying is eat like Zac Efron, and we're going to show you a bunch of body shots of Zac Efron, then you'll look like Zac Efron. Oh, that's not how this works. Even if we all ate the same and even if we all exercise the same, we'd still look very different and we wouldn't look like Zac Efron.
I guess the philosophy around my current diet is intermittent fasting mixed with getting enough nutrition to sort of sustain me throughout the day. I started intermittent fasting just after I stopped being vegan.
Interesting. What I like is that whilst he is incorporating intermittent fasting, he also puts emphasis on the fact that he wants to ensure that he gets enough nutrition and that that's really important to him. So nice little tick there.
My body wasn't processing the vegetables in the right way. So I decided to stop it and try something new. Intermittent fasting's been really helpful with that.
Body wasn't processing vegetables in the right way and intermittent fasting has helped with that. Whilst I don't hate the statement, I don't love it either. On the one hand, he hasn't given any sweeping statements over the fact that intermittent fasting is great, it's fixed his gut, or veganism is bad. And the reason I don't love it is because that he's changed a variety of things there. It's quite hard to pinpoint that it was intermittent fasting that was the fixer of all with that. And there could be a bunch of things that have potentially helped whatever digestive issues he was having.
Probably the one role that I had to change the most for was probably Baywatch. In that movie, I adopted a really, really specific eating regimen. Clean fish or meat with sweet potatoes. And I just did that the entire film. So that was the most extreme I'd ever gone. I think I was in ketosis that entire film.
Clean fish as opposed to dirty fish. If you've been here before, you know that there is no such thing as clean food and there is no such thing as dirty food. Unless you rolled your parent fish around in dog poo. That's a visual image that obviously nobody needed. It helps me make my point that there is no such thing as a clean or dirty food. And I know that many people refer to what society calls unprocessed food as clean. Newsflash, everything you eat is processed. Even water is processed. And on the one hand, I can appreciate that for specific acting roles, Zac Efron may need to have a certain physique, a certain aesthetic. But on the flip side, I also hate this perpetuating narrative that actors need to look a certain way for their job. That really doesn't sit right with me. And that's something that many people have commented on my video. Oh, when it comes to actors or actresses, you know, they have to look a certain way for their job. And my question is always why? For something like Baywatch, I know it had a certain aesthetic. Not that I've seen the film. I'm aware that it probably had a certain aesthetic that it was going after. But 2020s that we're in, do we still need to perpetuate this narrative that one must have an extremely restrictive diet and look a certain way for an acting role? Like, are we still there? Apparently. As I edit this, I do actually just want to point out that Zac Efron has gone on the record to talk about how detrimental restrictive diets can be for movie roles. Specifically for that Baywatch role, Zac Efron has said that the Baywatch physique had a devastating effect on him. I fell into a pretty bad depression for a long time. And so whilst I think it's important to point out that the pressure Hollywood puts on actors and actresses to have such restrictive diets for these roles is problematic, it's also just as if not more important to point out when celebrities speak out about how much damage these restrictive diets had on them. And I really think it's a great thing that Zac Efron spoke out about this.
Spear run was really fun. I just got to eat whatever I wanted. So when we were in Thailand, it was a good place to do it. I love Thai food. There's so many delicious things they can do with crab. Some of the best foods I discovered were like noodle dishes, like ramen, the soups and stuff they have out there.
I'm liking this side of Zac Efron. We're seeing him talk about enjoyment around food, really enjoying Thai dishes. We even saw him talking about having carbs with the noodles. A really lovely way to see him talk about food. I think in my mind, because Zac Efron has done so many very aesthetics-based films, I thought we were going to see a much more restrictive side. I mean, we're only 1 minute 38 seconds in, but I thought we were going to see a much more restrictive side of Zac Efron. But this, so far, minus the clean fish situation, so far so good, Zac.
Sometimes when you're on set, I give myself permission now to sort of let up and eat what I need to eat. If I'm craving something, I'll just have it. It's not the time or the place to put pressure on yourself, unless you really need to be shirtless that entire film. What am I talking about? Which tends to be the case for me sometimes.
Kind of felt a little bit sorry for him there a little bit. As a non-diet personal trainer, I really like what he's saying there, that if you are craving something, just have it. There was no element of restriction, no element of shame around food, no element of stigma around having food that you might crave or enjoy. Zac Efron isn't giving off this narrative of cutting out certain food. He's saying, if I want a type of food, I'm going to have it. And that is something that I wish we would see more from celebrities. He unfortunately Then goes on to say, unless you need to be shirtless in the entire film, which is very common for him. But that seems to speak more about the industry than Zac Efron himself. He's in this industry and maybe he's been pigeonholed into this type of role that he is shirtless in films, and there's this expectation of how his body is going to look. And that feels quite sad to me, that there's this expectation on men in certain films and women in certain films, let's be perfectly honest. But when it comes to like the Marvel characters, any kind of action film, there's this expectation the men are going to be incredibly ripped, very little body fat, be on incredibly restrictive diets. And that seems to be where Zac Efron has found himself a few times. And I'm not getting the vibes that he enjoys it very much. Not that I know Zac Efron personally, that's just the vibes I'm getting.
Toughest diet I've ever done for a role. Probably just not eating. I've done that a couple times. It's always rough.
Do I like how nonchalantly he said that? No. That's really stumped me because it really doesn't sit right. Flippantly talked about just not eating. I don't think that was the smartest thing for men's health to keep in this video, because whilst I appreciate that Zac Efron talks about it being rough, he doesn't promote it. To a degree, as somebody that is a celebrity, has influence, is seen as successful, is seen as beautiful or desirable, even by talking about that, you're still somewhat promoting it, and definitely shouldn't be anything that is promoted or encouraged. I think we as a society are quite quick to talk about mental health, issues with food, etc. when it comes to women, and that's a great thing. I think we still need to talk about how prevalent it is within men with regards to things like bigorexia, which I've spoken about before, and how the fitness industry, Hollywood, men's beauty industry plays a massive role in encouraging this idea that men need to look a certain way, and if you're specifically going to be in an action film, you also need to look a certain way.
Favorite carbohydrate to eat? I feel good when I have bananas and when I have sweet potatoes. I think I get the most bang for my buck out of those ones. Also plantains, for some reason. Those give me good, like, clean energy.
I was kind of hoping we were going to go down like a more white carby route. Maybe got my hopes up a little bit there. Love that he talked about plantains. I'm also a big fan of plantain. But he talked about kind of having clean energy. Good, clean energy. What is clean energy? I mean, all it gives me is vibes of like solar panels and wind turbines.
So typically I'll break fast around 10:30 or 11, but that's after I do some cardio.
So he's doing fasted cardio. As a personal trainer and with folk that I've worked with, I've found that everybody's very different. Some people feel better when they work out on an empty stomach, aka fasted. Some people, like myself, like to have a little something in the tank when we're about to work out. I like to have dates or a banana. And then some folk like to have a full meal before they work out. It is very personal. We need to find out what works best for us. And what I like is that Zac didn't give any sweeping claims about doing fasted cardio. He just says, you know, I do cardio, then I have breakfast.
First meal of the day. Usually starts with bone broth. I really love bone broth. It's satisfying. It's good for your stomach. Helps me kind of warm up for the real food.
Warm up for the real food. If you like bone broth, have it. Enjoy it. What I don't like is the narrative that bone broth is this kind of superfood. Because remember, superfood, just a made up marketing term, not an actual thing. Zac, you don't necessarily need the bone broth to like warm up for your meal.
Some sort of veggies with a really clean source of protein, whether it's chicken, beef, venison, elk.
Gave you a hall pass for rounds 1 and 2. We're on our 3rd version of a clean food. Come on now. Cheat meal. The term cheat meal is really problematic. Nobody's cheating when they have any kind of food. They're just eating.
Yeah, on cheat days, I love to eat massive amounts of pancakes. If I'm doing pancake day, it's a lot of pancakes. I'll get through a whole box of Kodiak cakes. If I'm gonna have a cheat meal, I still want it to be at least semi-good.
You'd probably be a lot more satiated if you just had regular pancakes rather than having a whole box of protein pancakes. And if we just allowed those pancakes in more frequently, you may not have this kind of cheat meal mentality around pancakes.
Once again, I'm Zac Efron. That's a little bit about what I eat.
This was a really mixed bag. On the positives, we saw Zac talk about kind of the detriments of having quite a restrictive diet. He didn't make any sweeping claims about intermittent fasting or the way that he's eating. So we still saw carbs, fat, and protein being included in every meal, and he didn't make false claims around what he was eating. No, that's not true. He did falsely claim to have clean food, and that's a false claim. The negatives? Talking about clean protein, talking about clean energy, whatever the hell that is, referring to cheat meals. But I appreciate that he was very honest with regards to prep for movies, etc., and how unenjoyable and potentially unhealthy that could be.